Mark Zuckerberg told Jan Koum, the founder and CEO of WhatsApp, that they don't have to monetize until they have 1 billion monthly active users, which they have by now.
Welcome to the Chatbot Podcast, the place where we talk about bots, artificial intelligence, smart automation, and messenger marketing. We value our time and enjoy when technology makes our lives easier. And now your host, Balint Pataki.
Hello, and welcome to the 6th episode. Many people experience chatbots via Messenger the first time, but Messenger was not the first messaging platform that opened its doors for bot developers. In fact, there are quite a few apps out there enabling us to build amazing bots and reach users on their favorite platform. For this episode, I invited David Pichsenmeister, the botfather. He's the co-founder of Oratio and the organizer of the Chatbot Conf. He is the one to talk about different messaging applications and bots. In this episode, we will talk about Messenger's newest chat plugin, WhatsApp and its business use cases, what is to know about Viber, Telegram and Kik, and many more. For the show notes, please just visit chatbottutorial.com/6. Without further ado, please welcome to the show David Pichsenmeister. All right. Thank you, David, for accepting my invitation. I know you have a technical background, and I'm really curious, what was your first bot experience? Was that during your studies or a little bit later?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me here. My first bot experience, actually, I'm in the bot ecosystem since around 2.5 years. And it actually happened on accident that we got into the bot ecosystem. I'm coming from a previous startup from the publisher ecosystem. So we're building a startup in the publishing space, which unfortunately didn't work out. But when I was working together with my co-founder in the same co-working space, there was like this one day where I came into the office and said like, hey, this local newspaper in Austria, they're sending news out on WhatsApp. And we were like, wow, that's pretty cool. They can receive news on WhatsApp. And we were just calling them and asking them, how do they send it out? And they were telling us, yeah, I have my local phone. I have like different broadcast lists. And I just sent myself an email. I open it on the phone and copy and paste it to all the broadcast lists. And I was like, that sounds like something we can automate. And so we were researching tools like how can we actually access messaging channels. And in early 2015, there actually weren't that many tools out there where we could do that. And that's why we actually started Oratio. And the first version was basically sending out broadcast messages to subscribers.
Okay, that sounds very startup-like. Like there was a strong use case. You saw something emerging and you jumped on it.
Exactly.
So I assume at this point you weren't the botfather, as many people call you. What made you? Was it the first start, or just your immense knowledge about all these platforms around bot builders?
I think one of the reasons was that we were really early in the space, because we actually started building kind of bots before we even realized ourselves what bots actually are. And my co-founder and me, we're big fans of Telegram, and we use Telegram for our personal communication and for our business communication. And then in June 2015, it actually happened that Telegram opened up the bot platform. And then we realized that this is a thing. Messengers are moving into this direction. We then took a deeper look into WeChat, what's going on in the Asian markets. And then we started building on top of these ecosystems. And everything was pretty early back then. I think there were just a couple of companies doing stuff in the bot space on Telegram. There was ChatFuel at this moment. There were ManyChat, or back then they were called ManyBots. There were Oratio, but there weren't that much people in the bot space before Messenger opened up. So was actually a pretty interesting time to start stuff on messengers or stuff on the bot ecosystem.
Yes, and as I understand, Oratio has the focus of connecting the different channels. So you say you help businesses to connect with their customers on messengers throughout. Can you give us a couple of examples? How does that work in practice?
Yeah, what we figured out very early on, especially from our personal experience, that you usually have more than one messaging account. So from myself, for example, I use Telegram with my friends. I use Messenger in more or less business relations. And there are also some other messengers like, I don't know, Kik, Viber, whatever. Most of the messengers, they have like a strong geographic region. For example, Messenger is pretty huge in the US, in Canada, but actually not that much used in Europe or other countries. And there's, for example, Viber, which is pretty huge in this Southeast Asia or in the Central Eastern Europe area. And for us, it was important to give businesses a tool where they don't have to care about all the different messengers. They basically just have one tool with all the messengers connected. So if a business wants to get started in messengers, they don't need to take care finding different tools for Facebook Messenger, another different tool for Telegram, another different tool for Kik, Viber, whatsoever.
And can the customer choose which channel do they prefer, or how does this synchronization works?
In our case, it's basically that the business decides on which channels they want to be active. Usually the business already know that they want to be, for example, active on Viber and on Messenger because their target audience uses this messenger. Mm-hmm. Then they can just connect these messaging channels, and then they basically need to promote these channels on their own, or saying they need to tell their customers that they are available on these channels. This can be done through different ways. For example, putting a widget on their website or adding these channels to their contact page on their website. But usually the businesses connect the messengers, and the end user can then just approach the business in these channels. And for us, for example, I mean, we are a B2B tool, so businesses using our solution, and we never appear for the end user. The end user doesn't even know that the business is using our service. They're just communicating with the official brand accounts of these companies.
Yes. So as a user would message, for example, a Facebook page, mm-hmm. and get redirected to your system so they can handle all the messages, that inquiries that they receive through Viber as well, or WhatsApp or that kind, right?
Exactly, yeah. We collect all the messages from different messengers into one inbox. So for the business, it doesn't matter from which network the messaging is coming from. And they can then organize and handle these conversations through our interface.
Mm-hmm. And how does the automation look like? Where comes the bot into this?
Yeah, this summer actually we launched a new feature which was called Automate. And the reason behind that was we're actually starting off as a customer service tool for human-to-human customer service. So basically, if an end user was texting a Facebook page or a Viber account, then there was a human on the other side answering these messages. And through many conversations with our customers and feedback from our customers, we realized that they have like many people asking the same questions. Basically, the frequently asked questions or FAQs. But the thing is, nowadays, many people don't go to websites anymore and read FAQ pages because they just take the smartphone out of the pocket and start texting the business. And for us, it was just the next evolution to try to automate these frequently asked questions. So Automate is a feature where businesses can put in their knowledge base, so the answers to the frequently asked questions, and then define some keywords and phrases when this frequently asked questions should trigger. So in the beginning, if an end user start chatting with a business, the chatbot starts the conversation and tries to answer these questions. And if that's not possible, for example, if it's something the chatbot cannot handle, then the conversation is passed to a human representative. So it's kind of a hybrid system between bots, AI, and actually service agents.
Mm-hmm. And how does that process? The bot understands that it doesn't really understand what's going on and sends an agent, or how does that going on in the backend?
For now, it's a pretty simple approach. So every conversation is started by default by the bot. And if it doesn't know the correct answer, we send out a fallback message. And in this fallback message, we have a call to action that the end user can request a human agent. That's basically it. So in the end, the customer just taps a button where they request a human agent.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That sounds very. It makes sense in a way,
Yeah.
because the user has this opportunity to direct it. How do you see, like, as of now and in the future, how many, like, the ratios between the bot handled messages and the human AI human agent messages? So how much percent of the conversation can the bot cover now and maybe in the future?
That's a good question, and I think it really depends on the kind of business. If you, for example, take a local restaurant, they often have the same questions, like stuff like opening hours, reservation, stuff like that, which a chatbot can easily handle. But you also have like other businesses where the actually personal relation or the questions are much more complicated. For example, if you're talking about, let's say, finance assistance or finance consulting. Also, I think that many people don't want to trust a bot to give the right financing advice, and they probably still want to talk to human agents. So it really depends on the kind of business, how much of the inquiries a chatbot really can handle. But we've seen on our platform that for some companies, they really have around 67% of the same questions over and over again, which a chatbot can handle easily.
Yeah, the way I see it as well, like in some complex cases, there will never be a real AI takeover. Like there's like some sort of human touch there should be there.
Yeah.
As a private person, I also have this, what you mentioned, that some of the people I message on Viber, on Telegram, on Messenger, is there a way to connect it like as a like not business to business as you have, but peer to peer or like as a customer only?
Yeah, unfortunately, as far as I know, there's no way. And to be honest, I don't think that something like that is coming. Because, I mean, the goal of the messenger networks itself is to keep the people within their messenger. So opening up, like, I don't know, APIs for private accounts, it doesn't really make sense, because then they would lose people within their messenger. And therefore, basically losing your customers or your users.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, it's one of the questions I want to go into, how Facebook opened now and enabled the websites to use their platform in a way. So you accumulated this all knowledge about the platforms, and we're really curious if we could talk like each of those a little bit. And actually, Thomas Schrantz asked this question. He's our upcoming guest. Where do you see these various platforms going? What are their strengths and weaknesses? So I would suggest let's start with Facebook, as I brought it up. They came up with this recent update. So basically it enables to use Messenger on websites. Where do you see Facebook going?
Yeah, I mean, especially with the recent feature where they opened up the Facebook chat on websites, which is kind of a live chat on a website. I think they're going to replace a lot of these live chat providers. which definitely makes sense because if you take a look at live chat right now on websites, you basically open up the website and this live chat pops up and you can start asking questions. But usually within the 1 or 2 minutes you spend in this website, no one is replying. So in the end, you leave an email address and then the conversation continues in email. And in my opinion, email is not a truly mobile channel. So it just makes sense to lead people into a messenger rather than an email to keep the conversation going on messengers, especially mobile messengers like Facebook Messenger, Telegram, Viber, and so on. So this is definitely a huge move for Facebook Messenger. Facebook Messenger is pushing a lot to bring businesses and businesses on Messenger and also customers texting these businesses on messengers, so that the businesses really see a benefit on being available on Messenger. So I think it's going to be a huge game changer. Facebook is so far the biggest platform, having a bot platform basically with around 1 to 2 billion monthly active users. So it's pretty huge. It's also pretty huge because basically everyone who owns a Facebook account has messaging. And I think the connection between Facebook, the platform, and the messenger definitely makes sense. And yeah.
Do you see Facebook taking over, at least in terms of the business, also in countries where geographically the other platforms are, so to say, winning, as you mentioned, for example, Austria with WhatsApp?
It really depends on the region. I mean, Facebook is pretty huge in the US, as I already said. But if you take a look, for example, at South America, especially Brazil, hardly anyone is using Facebook Messenger. Everyone is on WhatsApp, and everyone is looking for solutions for WhatsApp. But so far, there's no real official solution, especially no solution which can be used by small or medium companies. And this is really interesting because Facebook Messenger is not really working for their market. And businesses are not starting using Messenger because their audience is not there. And it doesn't really make sense for a business to open up a channel which no one uses. So the idea behind this bots and messaging channel is that you open this channel for business communication because people are using it. And you also can see this in other markets, for example, in the Central Eastern Europe, where also WhatsApp and Viber is pretty strong. People are not really using Messenger. And same as, for example, in China, where they basically only have WeChat. So it doesn't really make sense for business to open up a Messenger channel if anyone is using WeChat.
Exactly. I had a client inquiry for a chatbot, like an English teaching chatbot, and he was like, "Yeah, my main market is China," and I'm like, "Oh, then you should use WeChat and not Messenger."
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you mentioned WhatsApp, and I know it's really strong in Western Europe mainly and South America. Facebook was very silent about WhatsApp recently and also on the F8 conference. What's the situation there?
I mean, the truth is no one really knows what's the real situation with WhatsApp. I just have a few assumptions on why they are not doing the same as Facebook Messenger. I mean, the first thing is that even though WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, what I heard is that the WhatsApp team is still working kind of separately. And there was also saying that there was that actually Mark Zuckerberg told Jan Koum, the founder and CEO of WhatsApp, that they don't have to monetize until they have 1 billion monthly active users, which they have by now. And I think now they're starting to look into ways to monetize. And I think what's really important to know is that, as I already mentioned, that WhatsApp, it's pretty popular in emerging markets, not only South America, but also Africa, for example, or regions of Southeast Asia. And many of these people who are online in these markets, they don't have high-end smartphones like an iPhone or, I don't know, a Samsung Galaxy. They often have cheap smartphones like this $100 Android phones or even feature phones, and often edge internet or edge mobile data. So probably doesn't even make sense to have a fully bloated bot platform like Facebook Messenger is opening with all its graphical UI stuff like carousels in these areas. So it might make sense to have a more text-based system there, like WhatsApp actually is, instead of having this fully featured platform. And what also really is important to know is that Jan Koum said by himself they grew to this big number of 1 billion users because they see themselves as an SMS replacement. They don't see themselves as a social platform like WeChat or Messenger. They see themselves or their success in being an SMS replacement and being as easy as SMS texting. And if you take a look at WhatsApp, it's basically SMS. They're not that much more features than an SMS. You can text, you can send media, but there's no integrations like stickers, GIF, or whatsoever. So it's a very basic platform, easy to understand. And I think even if they're going to open up for businesses, which you're going to do somehow, I think it's more similar to the way how businesses using SMS now, so more text or media-centered rather than really interactive or platform-centric like it is on Messenger or WeChat.
And these are the use cases as of now with businesses, right? That are like sending out one-way messages in a way.
Yeah.
And it's nothing fancy, maybe a link or some text.
Yeah. I actually just booked a flight with KLM and I just tested the send to WhatsApp feature. And basically what you get instead of the boarding pass, it's just 2 text messages and actually images of the boarding pass.
Yeah, straightforward. Viber, you mentioned it's pretty strong in Eastern Europe. And what's the specialty of Viber? How do you see it going in the future?
It's really hard to tell where Viber is going. I mean, they're not only big in Central Eastern Europe, but also in some Southeast Asian markets. For example, it's pretty huge in the Philippines, but they also have some users in, I think, Malaysia and Singapore. Mm-hmm. And their approach, I mean, it's really hard to tell what's their actual approach, but they opened up public accounts, as they call their bots, basically. And in the beginning, it was really easy for every company to get one of these public accounts. But by now, they changed the direction a bit so that only big brands are able to make this public account. So it seems that they are not focusing on small or medium-sized businesses, but more on bigger brands and bigger companies to enable some kind of, let's say, high-quality public account experience rather than giving access to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. And actually, I was lucky to talk to a Viber representative at your conference, the Chatbot Conf, which we talk a little bit later. I just want to quickly go over to Telegram, which you mentioned was one of the platforms, the first platforms that came up with the opening for real bots. How do you see their pioneer role as of now? They have the more technological user base, as I understand.
Exactly. What I really like about Telegram is it's, in my opinion, the most advanced messenger and bot platform out there. So speaking of the user experience, there's no other messenger. I mean, except WeChat, which I don't really know because I'm not using WeChat. But from the messengers I know, Telegram is by far the most advanced, the fastest one. It really works well cross-platform. So on desktop, it has a native client on almost every major platform and on every mobile platform. And they were actually pretty early, or actually kind of pioneers, let's say, in the Western world for bot platforms. And it's still one of the most advanced. The only downside is that they don't have, in my opinion, like such a strong business focus or marketing focus as Facebook has. And therefore, it's not that huge. And it's more like, let's say, nerdy based user base they have.
Yeah, that was I tried to point out that I was like I love the software as well. I think it's very good and it's probably better than most. But I have like just a few friends I can message on it, so I don't even use it on a daily basis.
I basically talked all my friends into using Telegram, and the thing is, it's really hard to convince people to use a new messenger because there are already so many messengers out there. And for example, here in Austria or in Europe, people already have Messenger and WhatsApp installed. And if you talk to them like, yeah, just text me on Telegram, or I don't know, use Telegram, they're like, yeah, but why should I use another messenger? I already have like 2 messenger and SMS, and now I have to install a third messenger. What's different on this messenger? And basically the features, I mean, what's bad on Telegram, it's not huge. It's just small things. It's like the user experience is just a bit better, but if you get used to it, it's really hard to live without it. And what I really like on Telegram, it's a really open platform. For example, stickers. Everyone can create their own sticker set. And that's what, for example, I did for myself. I created my own sticker set with faces of me, so I can send out my stickers instead of like official stickers. And they also have a really good GIF integration or inline bots. And I think that's really cool features you miss on other platforms and just waiting when they're coming on these platforms.
Are there actually any businesses that want to use a Telegram as a communication form in your business?
There are not many businesses using Telegram as a main channel, but there are some businesses using Telegram as an additional channel. What we have seen from the geographic area is that these are mostly companies from the Ukraine, Russia, and very interestingly, the Middle East. I don't remember where I read it, but I think around 20% of the user base of Telegram is in the Middle East, which also is due to the encryption they had and one of the first messengers which offered encryptions. And we've seen quite some interest from this area, from Ukraine and from Russia.
Yeah, actually, I heard about from a Russian friend the first time. So I all use these messaging applications, but I don't really use Kik. Can you tell us about a little bit of Kik? I know it attracts a younger generation.
I can't tell you that much about Kik. I'm not using Kik because I basically have no people to text on Kik. We've integrated it on our platform, but we don't see many companies using it. I think so far we have less than 2% of the companies connected to a Kik account. And I think most of the companies who did connect in a Kik account, these were just the companies who connected all the messaging accounts we had. So these were like companies who were completely open to open up new channels. And since they were able to connect these channels to our system, they just opened these accounts. But we never had a customer specifically asking only for Kik.
Mm-hmm. And do you see it getting traction, or maybe just stays as another opportunity among the 4 or 5 messaging channels that the companies offer?
I mean, I don't see that much growth going on Kik. I don't know where they are going. I think they're also some kind of pioneers. Kik was pretty early in the bot game as well. But I don't see that they have that much traction. And for me personally, it's probably also because I don't really understand the use case or the audience on Kik. People are always talking that it's very popular amongst teens, especially in Canada, US, but also Australia and New Zealand. But since I'm a little bit too old to be a teen, I don't really can take a deeper look on how people are actually using Kik.
Exactly. Is there any platform we haven't really discussed you want to point out?
From a messaging perspective?
Yeah, or from your company experience standpoint.
Not really. I think these are the major messaging networks. There's Facebook Messenger, there's Viber, there's Kik, there's Telegram. I mean, there are also some smaller messengers like Line. They're pretty popular in South Korea and Japan. I don't have much experience with Line by myself. I only know they tried to move into Western markets like Europe and US. So they opened the office both in Berlin and I think in San Francisco or either New York. But as far as I know is that they stopped doing that because they didn't have much success. So they're now focusing again on their region, which is Japan, Korea, and surrounding areas. And also there's Skype, which also has a bot platform, but I hardly know anyone who is still actively really using Skype except for phone calls.
I actually use Skype in many of my business calls and communication.
Yeah.
But I tried a game on it and it was very, very limited.
Yeah.
About
I mean, I still use Skype a lot for business calls because they still have a strong brand. It's one of the first major brands basically enabling video calls on the internet. But I think they somehow, in my opinion, failed the transition from this video calling app on desktop to a mobile messenger.
exactly. They had for a long time issues with the synchronization and made it very annoying in a way.
Yeah.
Another more like business platform is Slack. What do you see? Is there any connection for a broader audience, or is it like more like stays in the corporate world and people can integrate different platforms in it as well?
In my opinion, I mean, Slack is a huge success. Obviously, it's the fastest growing SaaS startup ever. So that speaks for itself. I think what's really interesting to see is like how they disrupted business communication, and really is basically one of the platforms who really made it possible to move away from email at least a bit, what a lot of other platforms already promised, but Slack is the one who is apparently really achieving it somehow. I think it's not only a business solution, it's also some kind of a consumer solution. You can see that Slack is, they're actually opening up a lot of Slack channels, which are used instead of forums, because the communication is way more interactive than on a traditional old school forum. So you can see a lot of communities opening up on Slack, which are not business focused at all. So I also see that they're gaining some ground in the consumer area, but it's more like a community software replacement rather than a messaging replacement, like, I don't know, Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. So I think, I don't think that they're gonna move in this area anytime soon. And also it doesn't really make much sense for them because they're making a lot of money with businesses and growing like crazy. And you don't make that much money with a consumer messaging app, very likely.
Yeah, I really like that you pointed out the forum-like, community-like function of it. I actually entered some of them. If you're interested in the cryptocurrency, these are like markets which are very new and very like used by people who are more inclined to use these softwares as well. So I think it's a great use case there.
Exactly.
I just want to quickly talk about the Chatbot Conference. It would take a whole another episode to cover it. So I just want to ask you, how did you see the growth because it was like this immense growth period compared to last year's and this year's conference, I believe. Do you see the whole world moving towards bots in a way?
Yeah, I mean, we did our first conference in October 2016, and the second one this year in October. And last year we had altogether around 380 people, and this year around 500. And I'm actually super happy to see that still that many people are interested into bots. And a lot of people are talking about that the hype is over, which is kind of true. I mean, this big hype, which we had last year after Facebook opened up, it's going a bit down. But what we also have to see is that many, many more businesses are getting interested into messaging channels, not only bots, but moving their businesses into Messenger. And one of the strong use cases is, for example, messenger marketing, because messengers are a very strong channel to do email and being a really, really good replacement for email marketing. Because as I already said earlier, email is not a really good mobile channel. So that's why I also think we've seen that we still have more than 500 people on the conference, because businesses are getting more interested into using these messaging channels for their communication with their customers.
Exactly. That is also what I see, that it's probably like some people realize, okay, bots won't solve everything. The AI is not quite there yet, but businesses can use it a lot with their communication to clients. Yeah.
I mean, it's super interesting to see, because last year, the F8 conference in 2016, when they opened up, they were selling bots as some kind, or they were actually focusing a lot on natural language and understanding. But basically, they sold that you can talk to bots like you do to real people. But we quickly figured out, like the whole ecosystem quickly figured out that we're not that far yet. We can automate simple stuff, simple conversations. But other than that, we still need human to answer more specific questions. But what we've also seen is that Messenger had a massive growth, and these channels are getting more and more interesting for businesses.
Exactly.
So now we're seeing the rise of businesses moving more communication to Messenger, even though it's not some kind of smart conversations or AI, but it's really necessary for them to be available on these mobile and engaging channels.
Exactly. There are many reasons for that, especially the attention that the users have on Messenger in compared to email, or the frictionless or integrations, whatnot. I just want to finish this off with 2 community questions. One of them is from Natalie Koroteva. Which bots do you use on a daily basis or regular basis?
On a regular basis, I mean, as I already told you earlier, we are using Telegram, also in our company for internal communication, but also with my friends. And the bots I use most are basically productivity bots, as you can call them. So there's this one bot called Meeting Coordinator on Telegram, which makes it easier to coordinate meetings. So basically set up, it's an inline bot, so you can use it in every conversation. You just set up the meeting with the day, the time, and the location. It sends out a message, and then people can just reply to if they're going to this meeting or not. So it's making meetings easier. The second one is kind of an alert bot, or a reminder bot, which reminds you or a group to a specific task. We, for example, use it to schedule our meetings or schedule our stand-up meetings in the morning, but also to set up reminders for, I don't know, daily tasks, whatsoever. And yeah, these are basically the bots I use most.
Okay, and a very important question by Clemens: how can be that cool as you are?
I don't think I'm that cool, but very honored to hear that. I think first step is start wearing a cap.
Yeah, I actually don't wear always caps, but I thought you will have it on, so just match the style. All right, thank you very much. I have also a question. Who would you nominate as our next guest on this podcast? We talk about AI, messenger marketing, and bots, of course.
I mean, you already told me that you have Thomas on the list, which is definitely a good choice. There are like two people I would think who would be a really good fit and have a lot of experience in different fields. One of them is Emmanuel, the founder of Heroes. He's doing influencer marketing bots. I think that's a very interesting channel. And the second one is Stefan Kahner. He's also from a Vienna startup called Monsteel, and they're doing a fashion chatbot. And this is a purely B2C product. And what's really interesting about them is that it's not another, let's say, graphical bot. They're basically a deep learning company in the fashion ecosystem using bots as one of their interfaces.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. I already invited Emmanuel actually, and yes, invite Stefan as well. How can people find you? How can they learn more about Oratio?
Learn more about Oratio, they can just find on our website. It's called Orat.io, which together is Oratio. And for myself, I'm available on Facebook for Facebook Messenger. I also have a public messaging channel, which is David Pichsenmeister.
Okay, we will post this in the show notes. Thank you very much, David, and see you around.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and great talking to you.
All right, bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed the interview. You can find the show notes of this episode at chatbottutorial.com/6. If you are interested in learning more about messenger marketing, I regularly host a free live training online. You can sign up via chatbottutorial.com/webinar. Thank you for your attention and talk to you in the next episode.
Thanks for joining the Chatbot Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to rate us on iTunes and share it with others.